so glad that you guys have joined us today. Hopefully, I say this every week, but hopefully you're having lunch or a lunch break. If you're watching this after the fact, we invite you into the conversation here. This is Kari Stacey. My name is Kim, in case you didn't know that, but this is Kari Stacey, and Kari Stacey is our executive executive assistant to both Steve, who's our now founding pastor, and Ronnie McDougall, who's our executive pastor.
And senior pastor Shane Ham.
Yeah. And I'm actually sitting with Kari Stacey for a few reasons. I'm going to just tell you the 3 reasons right out of the gate right now. One of them is because this woman does so much behind the scenes at Northpointe. I guarantee you have been affected by something she has put into place or has helped to develop or has supported in some way physically with administrative support or with food or with, phone calls, whatever it is. Carrie does so much at our church. She's really an unsung hero of Northpointe. And so number 1, I want all of you to meet her because of that value. Number 2, Kari Stacey has an amazing story of transition that brought her to the place that she is right now. And we'll kind of unpack that a little bit more. But the third thing is that Kari Stacey will likely represent somebody in your life, in your work environment. Either you work for or work with or work under someone just like Carrie. And because she is someone that really does not like being on TV, or you said this by design. What did you say? I'm behind the scenes
by design. By God's design. Yes.
But if you know Kari Stacey, and the way that she loves and supports our staff is so tender, it is so personal. And so even though she says the behind the scenes is exactly how God has her, man, the way that she supports and loves behind the scenes is so beautiful and so important. And it is just a blessing to Northpointe. And so I'm glad that you said yes to sit here with me and talk today. And so, Carrie, how long have you been with Northpointe now?
I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary.
Wow. Yep. Congratulations.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
In October, because you were talking about that earlier.
Yep.
And here is where the story of transition is a great place for us to start, because you had another job before coming to Northpointe that you had been at for a long time.
Yes. I had what I thought was my only career. I had been 23 years with a Fortune 500 company, spent most of that time in supervisory and managerial positions, was challenged by it, enjoyed the work, had many jobs over those 23 years. And man, those last 3 years were hard and rough and fraught with personality disruptions. And after 23 years, I was let go. I wasn't laid off. I'd love to be able to say I was, but no, that ugly word fired. I was
Have you ever
gone.
had you ever been fired from a job? Yeah.
Never.
So I imagine.
And I had never been unemployed.
Okay.
Yeah, I had never been unemployed. I started there when I was 23.
Wow. Were you expecting this to happen? Was this shocking?
Shocking.
Okay, you had no idea.
No, was not expecting it.
Wow.
And had been in what I considered positive steps, working with my supervisor, with human resources, with the general manager, trying to resolve and the issues were true. The issues were real, and some of them just could not be overcome. And so it just ended.
help me understand. I've also never been fired from a job, but I can imagine what it would do to me. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But take me to that moment that you're sitting across from, you're having this conversation. The words are being said to you.
Yes.
What were you thinking in this moment?
I remember going completely cold. I'm sure I turned very, very pale and going completely cold. And my very first thought was, I am a 50% earner in my household. Will I lose my home? Will we have to give back a car? What happens to my son's activities? What does this mean?
You're in problem-solving mode immediately.
Instantly. How do we pay for insurance? Can I get on my husband's insurance? Because I carried all 3 of us, So just stunned and very instantly fearful of the future.
Yeah.
Instantly fearful.
Yeah. And how long? Okay, so you pack things up, you go home. What are the next emotions you're experiencing now?
It was true grief. It was the death of something. It was the death of a career. It was the death of a believed future. It was the death of a plan. And so I really did grieve wholly as if a person had died. There was a lot of fear. I remember praying a lot, but I don't think I was capable of hearing.
Oh,
I was like too broken and shut down in those first days.
It was just lament.
Perfect
It
word.
was just lament.
Yes, crying out to God. But I think I was probably just crying out in my pain. I don't think I really even asked him, what would you like me to do now?
You weren't there yet.
Yeah. And I got there after 30 days of sitting at home, of crying, of looking for work that I didn't feel I was capable of doing. 23 years in one industry, and I felt that I had nothing to bring to anyone. Having done the type of work I had done in managerial level and that kind of thing, I really thought I was probably capable of being a shift leader at Taco Bell or McDonald's, which I had done in my college years. And I knew what the work was, and I could do that, but nobody's going to need me. My experience won't be valuable. And so very broken, very broken. But after about 30 days, I was reminded, because I had always worked, and I was reminded that I had said, boy, if I ever got to be a stay-at-home mom, I would volunteer in my son's school, and I would serve at my church during the week, and I would go back to volunteering with the babies in the hospital. Well, Carrie, you have to get up off your tush and, put your feet to those words and do something. And so I called the office manager, Terry.
Here at Northpointe.
Here at Northpointe.
So you had been coming to Northpointe already?
Yeah. I had been here 6 or so years.
Okay, all right.
And Terry, we're creatures of habit, and I would sit in the 3rd row, and Terry and Bernard would sit in the 4th row, and we would see each other at church on Sundays. And so we had developed a light friendship, I would say.
Yeah.
And Terry was awesome. I called and said, hey, my life has changed. I find I have time on my hands. Is there something I could do? And I love the way God works. I didn't see it in the moment. It took me a while before I really recognized what he was doing. But she said, well, gosh, we can always use help answering the phones, but a lot of people aren't comfortable with the phones.
Yeah.
Is that something you'd be willing to do? And I went,
yes.
I used to manage call centers and
wow.
train customer service representatives. I'm very
Wow.
comfortable on the phone. I can do that.
Wow.
And so I came in and answered the phones, and people thanked me for doing it. And that started to rebuild and heal.
I remember these years. We were not in the office that we were in last.
Right.
We were off of Spruce at the time. And I remember you just always had such a joyous disposition when you were there. You have a great voice for video, for phone calls and stuff. And I remember saying, being one of those people that's saying, thank you so much for being here and for serving this way. And you would say, you guys are a joy to me.
Yes.
You guys are healing my heart. You guys are doing such a good thing for me. And I mean, I knew a little bit of the story, by meeting in the break room moments and stuff like that, and just kind of hearing a little bit about. But I could tell this was a hard season for you.
Oh, this was really the hardest time, and I felt very alone. My family was wonderful. My husband was kind and loving and encouraging. But I think I was even afraid to share my whole fear with him because I didn't want to put more burden on him.
Right.
Because, hey, man, I just took away half our income.
Right. Right.
And so one of the things that I've always felt is when people say, well, why Jesus and why church and why is this important? And my word has always been home. Where Jesus is home. And so in this moment, that home was with Jesus' people in the church office. I could go there and I had family instantly. And you guys would hear me and you would listen to me, and I didn't bring you more stress the way I would bring to my husband, or I wouldn't share much with my son. He was a young teen, and you don't bring that to your kiddo, but God had provided church family, and he put you all in front of me and let you love me when I needed to be loved and restored. And it was big.
I hear what you're going through, and I think to myself, if this was me, if I was walking through this, there would be probably some lies formulating in my head.
Oh, yes.
That I was probably pretty comfortable embracing because it felt like truth, and confirmed truth in that I'm not with this company anymore, so clearly these things that I'm feeling are actually true about who I am as a person. And so for those 30 days, were you aware? I mean, I'm assuming you had those same things. You're shaking your head, yes.
Yes,
So I'm assuming those thoughts came through your mind. And how in 30 days were you able to be like, you know what, I'm hearing the Lord saying I need to do this other thing, and out of faith and trust, I'm going to do that. Have those voices gotten quieter over time? How quickly was it that we went from 30 days of just kind of trying to figure things out to...
Well, I started volunteering in July,
Okay.
and in October, Shane and Susan made me a part-time job offer. And in that first 30 days, I was telling my husband, I'm going to apply at Taco Bell. And he's like, no. You need to go make money so that we can continue our life, you know.
Right.
And when they offered me a part-time job, I went home to Scott and I said, honey, they've offered me this job and I really want to take it. I feel good there. I feel stronger. I'm getting somewhere. And can I take this job? And his first instinct was, no.
Yeah.
And I prayed and I asked and we talked about it some more. And he said, yes, but you'll have to tell him you can only stay 1 year and you'll help get the, you know, because there was a project thing. You'll help get the project and you'll set them up well.
Right.
But you can't stay.
Right.
And it was like every day God was working on Scott's heart and God was working on my heart. Shane has exceptional experience in the business world and workforce management and that type of thing. And so he had encountered broken employees before.
Yes.
And it was just perfect the way he would talk and respond to me. And I would come home and not be fearful. I would come home and be happy. And all of those feelings, just one on top of another, I started getting more and more distance from fear and more distance from brokenness and more distance from I don't have anything to offer. And God was just restoring it piece by piece by piece. And it didn't happen all at once. And I turn and look back and I see all of the ways he did that for me.
Wow. And now being 10 years away from that time. I mean, I cannot stress enough the value that Kari Stacey has brought to our staff from moment one, really, even when you were not getting paid for it. You know, what God sees you do, you know, in secret, basically. And if you're entrusted with a small amount, you are then entrusted with more. And the way you've loved and cared for people when, you know, there was no paycheck coming at the end of that. You just were in a place where, man, I can offer this. And I felt this and need it even for myself.
And it's that adage, what is it? Blessed to be a blessing kind of thing.
Yes,
because I was receiving, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? I was receiving so much blessing that I was able to pour out blessing, but I was pouring out blessing and was able to receive so much blessing. And it's just, you know, God working it through in all of us and just wanting us to have the fullness, the joy in our lives that we get from living a life along his pathway. Instead of, you know, I mean, I was out there. It was a good job. It was good money. It was all of that stuff. But really, Kim, I had stopped asking God years before if I was where he wanted me to be. When I started, I asked all the time. But there got to a point, well, he wants me here. And so I stopped asking the question. Wrong move. That put it all in my hands and took it.
You stopped asking the question, but I mean, like, that's not to say that you weren't having quiet time, or did it just look different? What did your kind of relationship with Jesus look like in the career before?
Gosh, before everything got so horrid, it was, I would say, golly, I hate to say that. I would say probably for the 2 years before that, it was fine. It was, there was a structure, there was a plan, there was a Bible reading plan. For the 2 years before that, I was not in a small group. I wasn't even doing women's table studies on Tuesday nights. So I did not have the relationships to the depth where I could communicate with women. I was in church, but I didn't have some of those relationships where I could really pour myself out to another woman who would then speak truth to me. I had coworkers, but they had their own jobs.
Well, and you know, what you just said right now, have people, women that would speak truth to you. you also have to be in a place to receive that truth.
Yes, you do.
Correct. So, what is the difference now? Do you feel like your relationship with the Lord changed? Do you feel like your understanding, your listening skills? You know, you said you kind of stopped. Oh, I don't need confirmation. I've been in this job for 20 plus years. Like, we're good. Thanks, Lord, for getting me this far. And I think that's a majority of people. I mean, I think that we place a lot of our value by the jobs that we do.
We do. We gain so much of our identity there.
Identity is locked up in it. So when that kind of gets shaken, we then, immediate, it's like, why, God, would you do this to me?
Right.
Right? Why would you take this away from me?
And what I liken that to is I hadn't even noticed, but we talk about open hands, holding things with open hands, right? And in the first part of my career, I really held my career with open hands,
Right.
And I said, Lord, you placed me, and I have to say, He prevented me from getting a job that would have been my undoing. It would have caused me to have to make moral choices.
A perfect example of a no. A prayer is
there's
a no answer.
There's a no
sometimes.
answer. And I didn't understand it, and I thought that was going to further my career, but the answer was no. And in hindsight, I'm able to look at that and say, thank you, Lord. I would have had to quit my job or make questionable moral choices, which would have been worse for me.
Right.
But I held that job with open hands. There came a time when I wasn't communicating well. I wasn't asking the question. I wasn't listening well. And I started to hold the job. And by the time the job was taken from me, and that's how I look at it, they're peeling my fingers off of this. And I'm, that visual came to me, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks in. And I remember just sitting in my living room and looking at my hands and thinking, Lord, you had to pry me out of there because I wouldn't go. I wouldn't listen to you. You were telling me before, and I could go back and I could see where things had fallen apart and I wasn't paying attention to it. And I just kept thinking, if I'll work harder, I'm smart, I can be smarter. I'm strong, I can be stronger.
I'll make the correction.
I can do this.
Right.
Okay, wait. Where is the I and where is the you? Okay, Lord, do you want me here? Will you help me through this? Will you guide my steps as I try and rectify these issues? And I had lost all of that.
Right.
And so, prying my,
Right.
They say cold, dead fingers, prying my cold, dead fingers off this job.
There's a faith that comes in the thing that you just mentioned, right? Like there's a faith and a trust that happens when we say all the things that I have, my family, my children, my home, my jobs, my car, like all those things. I give them to you, Lord. Scary statement, because it can mean that those things,
that He removes them from our life.
They may be.
But I think one of the biggest learnings I have in all of this is saying, okay, Lord, in this moment, in this time of transition, in this time of loss, in this time of joy, am I experiencing it fully? Am I learning what you'd ask me to learn? Am I stepping in or leaning in where you're asking me to? Am I paying attention to the whole thing? Or 5 years from now, are you going to have to pry my cold, dead hands off of this thing too? Yeah.
I love that you said that, because it's kind of the way that I've pictured this COVID year. There's something to say in that we're all experiencing this very different world, this different change, and changes in the way that we're having to work and shop and function, but that we're all experiencing it. We all are. And so many of us, I'm sure, just can't wait to get back to that, how things were. But I've been trying to look at it like, what would you have me learn during this time? What would you have me come to know better? God walks us through things so that we can learn to take on His characteristics, so that we can learn how to trust and have faith in Him more. He has a plan, and it's something to be said that He has us all going through this at the same time. And so many people may be actually sitting in the exact situation you're talking about right now, having lost a job in the middle of this COVID season. And I loved, all staff recently, you shared even that experience being so very different and very strange. March came. I remember the day we were all in the office.
All standing around together.
We all prayed. Everyone that was there in the office at that moment, we got the call, we got the notification that
go home and
we
go
need to
home
go
now.
home. And so we stood in a circle and we prayed and we packed our stuff up and we left.
Yeah.
And Carrie, you continued to come to the office in case people needed to, meet some, whatever. You were
Right.
kind of the rep for the, one rep for Northpointe in that
Yeah.
office. And you experienced just kind of a whole different thing. You're walking around an empty office
Right.
with these personal, pictures and items around desks and stuff. And it probably felt a little like, you were saying like the rapture had
Yeah.
happened or something,
And I
like,
got left
my
behind
goodness,
somehow. It's
everybody's,
like, oh, Lord.
everybody's gone. And I loved what you said though. She actually said she would pray for us. She would walk by the cubicles. This is Sydney. This is Casey or whatever. And she would just begin to pray for that staff member, pray for that family. What kind of healing, was that a healing time for you? I hear, even as I'm saying it, I'm thinking that must have been a healing thing.
It was, because in the midst of all of this, you feel that there's nothing you can do. You are at the mercy of the circumstances. But when we pray, we are at no one's mercy. We are standing before our great God. And so there was something I could do. And it was positive, and it was proactive, and it was, I'm the administratively built person, and I like checklists. And so I was being positive and proactive, and I was reaching out, and I was expressing, and I was asking, and all of those things that help me be me. And as I'm going through this, and then every once in a while I'd get a phone call, from a Kim who says, "Hey, I forgot to change my address in Amazon. There's a package. Are you there?" "Yes, I'm here. I can take." And something so simple that allowed me to be productive and purposeful, whether it was getting a package or praying for someone, or, taking the phone call where people, I love our church, and people would call who are not associated with our church, and they would say, "Do you still have pastors? Do you still have pastors?" "Yes, we do."
Yes.
"Well, I need someone to talk to." "I have people for you to talk to." What can we do? And being able to do that, I think, saved me from depression, because had I gone home, and I'm not built that way, God would have taught me something in it, and I hope that I would have been open enough to learn well, but that wouldn't have been healthy for me.
Yeah.
And yet I learned something wonderful, even in the solitary action in that office.
Right. And I mean, these are huge things. I mean, when we think about, so we moved from that office into kind of nowhere land right now.
Yes.
So much of our staff is still working from home. Some of our staff works in kind of a makeshift office that we have here on campus as we wait to move into our new offices.
One
which
more
we'll be doing in the
transition.
one more transition. So, taking each one of these, I can see you. I know you. I feel like, these transitions are incremental for a reason. In other words, I feel like there's something to be learned in each one of these steps.
Yeah.
Right? That the step, even, we go all the way back to beginning at Northpointe, just this positioning yourself to say, I don't know why this has happened, but I'm here, you Lord. I'm sorry for not having listened maybe better in the past. I'm going to put myself into this position of just caring and using my gifts and loving, and it has turned into something.
And I trust, Lord, that you're going to do something with it.
Right.
And he does.
Right.
Every time.
Right.
He does.
If you know Kari Stacey, joy is like a big word for Carrie.
That's
It's
my
the
word.
very end of it's the way she ends emails. It says joy with an exclamation point. You have a lot of joy things in your home.
do.
And so anytime I hear the word joy, I think of Kari Stacey. There was times, I'm assuming, there was not a lot of joy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's true. But I was reminded many times over the months, whether I was in the office by myself, the times that I did, try and work from home, when I would go for a whole day and not hear another voice, those were hard times. But I was reminded over and over again, because that is my word, of all the scriptures that talk to us about joy. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Okay, well, that's a totally internal thing. That is not external circumstances. That is God's gift to me, and he's providing me strength. And so he would remind me of the scriptures that he planted all throughout his word to cause us to rejoice in him, not in our circumstances
'Cause those are gonna
necessarily.
change.
Right. But he's not changing, and our ability to rejoice in him is always available, always available. So yeah, that was important to me
Yeah.
during the time.
What would you tell somebody who's sitting in that in-between world of maybe having been let go and they're kind of waiting for?
Yeah.
What would you tell? I mean, if you were to go back and tell yourself, Carrie, in those 30 days.
Wow. I think the first thing I would tell myself is it's okay to feel everything I'm feeling, that grief was real and it was okay to grieve. And to remind myself, 30 days was too long. But to remind myself that I'm not made to sit here in it. Sit here for the moment. That's okay. Spend the time that you need to spend. But experience all of it. Experience the pain, but ask the questions. What should I learn? Where should I go? Who, Lord, will you bring to me? Who should I reach out to? How would you have me serve? Don't allow ourselves to sit. You know, I think we hear from the outside world, oh, you need to feel all your feelings. Yes, you do. But, oh, we'll sit with that pain. Okay. But don't stay in that pain. Pastor has taught us over the years a phrase that has been important to me is actively waiting. When we pray and ask for something and we need to wait for the answer, Lord, I want a job. I need a job. Help me.
Right.
Right.
But there's there an action I can do with that?
Right. And if I don't know what to do, take a reasonable step. And for me, that was it. My reasonable step was calling my church and saying, how can I volunteer? I didn't call my church and say, I need a job. I didn't walk into Starbucks and say, let's get going right now.
Right.
Because I didn't know what the job was I should have. But I knew I shouldn't just sit any longer. And so actively wait, take a step, reach out to people, reconnect, find a place to serve. And, you know, we serve with love, we're serving the Lord. So if you're holding babies in a hospital, which they won't let us do right now, but if you're holding babies in a hospital, if you're reading books online that kiddos can partner with their teachers on,
cool. Yeah.
what can we do?
Yeah.
And embrace those things and do them with love.
As you're saying that, I think of the term, there's a statement that says the idle mind is a devil's playground.
Yes.
And so, yeah, what you're basically saying is when you're actively waiting, you're not an idle mind.
Right.
You leave yourself susceptible and open to Satan's lies, which spin us in circles and
trap
enslave
us. Oh, my goodness.
And the more that we do that and submit to that instead of an active waiting, the longer we may remain.
Right, in our negative place.
Right.
You know, now every step forward, every step I took wasn't a step forward. So I tried to be physically busy, and so I would go out and work in the yard and that kind of thing. So one of the things I was telling you earlier, Kim, is I painted my kitchen green. Green is not a good color. It did not turn out nicely, but I spent days and days and days, and it was occupying my hands while my mind was processing.
Yeah.
So
there was some healing in it.
There was, but you have to look for it. You have to want to see. So anyway, there are a million things you can do. And so the first thing I would say is ask God which one, and then take a reasonable step. It doesn't have to be the perfect step. It doesn't have to be the final step, but just take a reasonable step.
Joining a small group, you know, offering your gifts to someone, a neighbor, the church, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And gosh, right now especially, who can you shop for?
Oh, it's great.
Who's afraid to go out because of a loved one in their family or because they're on their own and they're afraid to go out because if they get sick, that's it for them.
Right.
Who's going to help them then, right? So who can you love on and how?
Do you have a verse that it's maybe a favorite verse of yours? Or?
A favorite verse of mine, anytime somebody asks me that question, I say James 4:8. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And the book of James is my favorite book because it's practical advice on living the Christian life. It's practical. It's straightforward. It's, you know, it's God being gracious to us in every line through James. One of the pieces of James 4 that I really like, it starts in verse 5, and he's just talking to the church. But he says, "Do you think the scriptures have no meaning? They say that God is passionate, that the spirit he has placed within us should be faithful to him. He's passionate about my faithfulness. And I love that. And then it goes on to say that he gives grace generously. He opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. Ooh, Carrie, you were very proud and making your own decisions and not including God. And you had to be humbled to learn something.
And I assume there's a status in working for a Fortune 500
yeah,
company,
there was,
right?
There was.
Yeah.
But it reminds us, humble ourselves before God. Resist the devil and he will flee. Come close to God and God will come close to you. Purify your hearts because your loyalty is divided between God and the world. And that's an everyday thing. Our loyalty can be divided between God and the world, but God deserves all of our loyalty. And so it goes on with lots of different things, and it ends in this section with, humble yourselves before the Lord and he will lift you up in honor. And so as I go through that section of James 4, and I think when I finally let go all the way and had a humble and contrite heart and said, okay, I've done it wrong. I see that now. I stopped asking. I stopped listening. I've done it wrong. Where do I go from here? What do I do? And I present myself as a humble offering back to him. He lifted me up. He healed me. He brought the right people at the right time with the right words, with the love that I needed. Much of that was through this church. Much of that was through the staff. But an equal amount was through the opportunity to serve, as well as the people speaking back to me, me being able to give
And you would
well.
have never thought to find a place at a church and have, a job at a church or do some of the things that we were even talking about how we were developing as a church 10 years ago still. We're always developing as a church, right? And that we would, hey, we need to start this new thing, or we don't know how to develop this. And you would say, I've done that before.
Right, but in that experience, would I have done it?
Right.
Right, because I thought I had what I needed over here. And somehow I fell into the trap of keeping things separate. And what has been so good for me these last 10 years is being involved in many different levels, right? I'm a staff member. I have a job to do. I get paid to do that job. And I want to do it well.
Right.
Beyond that, I have a purpose to fulfill. My blessing is that I get paid to fulfill that purpose, yes. But my real gift from God is that I am fulfilling the purposes he has for my life. But because of all of this stuff, I also get to greet members when they walk in and say, a lady driving from here to there says, I saw the church, I came in, my life is falling apart.
Yeah.
Great, sit down.
Yeah.
Let's talk, let's pray, what can we do?
Yeah.
I get to be a part of a small group in a way that I never have before. I get to show up and see people at Steve's NBI class week after week after week, and sitting in the back of the room doing my job, get to enjoy the blessing of learning what they're learning, even though I'm not technically in the class.
Right.
And all of those things are because God is passionate about my faithfulness to him. Right?
Yeah.
And if I can step into it, and if I can stay there and be reminded by people who love me that this is where I belong on the pathway that God has prepared for me.
And it's better than you would have ever imagined.
Oh, golly. I thought that job was it.
Yeah.
All it. And what was it? It was a money-driven job. We want customers and we want money. We want customers, and then we make more money, you make more money. And yeah, those bonuses were cool, but it didn't give me life.
Right.
In a lot of ways, it stole life from me.
Right.
It didn't give me life.
Right.
So anyway, it has been a big 10 years.
Yeah.
It has been a big 10 years. Looking forward to some cool things that are going to happen here in the next little bit.
Yeah, because a new transition in that
Yeah.
you're adding Shane back into your...
I get him back, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't have to let go of the support I enjoy giving for Steve.
Yeah.
We're going to move into our new offices, which I've been able to be a part of, and that's been exciting.
Oh, just more than be a part of. My goodness, you've orchestrated all of these moves and the people and the boxes and the...
People and boxes.
It's a lot of stuff, though.
But there's so much more that goes into that office,
Yeah.
and a lot of other behind-the-scenes people who love to give in
Yeah.
that way because
Yeah.
that's the way God gave them
Yeah.
to give, you know.
Yeah.
So you were saying at the beginning how we know somebody like me who's a
yeah.
behind the scenes person, and boy, I'll tell you, there's somebody sitting in your office right now
Yeah.
who is built to support you, who takes joy from supporting you, who is probably overlooked in a lot of ways, and in 99% of them, it never phases their heart,
Right.
but would be so lifted up by your encouraging word,
Yes.
by the pat on the shoulder that says, I know I don't even know what you do
Yep.
or all that you do, but I am glad you're here and I'm glad you're a part of this team. Man,
Goes a
you
long
would speak
way.
life into someone's heart by doing that.
I encourage you to do
Yeah.
that today. I almost guarantee God's putting somebody
Somebody in
on
your mind.
right now. Man, you don't even have to overthink this. Pull out your phone and text that person, call them.
Yep.
Say, let's go for coffee.
Or a simple,
offer,
I appreciate
just,
you.
hey, I appreciate
I
you.
see you.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I see you.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really, really, really important. If you ever see Kari Stacey, I just encourage you to do that for her. She is an amazing woman. I love that she's come to just share that story of transition, and I just think it's so valuable for us to learn how to do it, and you have done it so well, and God has been blessing it, and we have been a part of that
God has
blessing
been
as a
blessing
church,
it.
and we have been part of that blessing as a staff, and so we're excited to see where we go in the next
right.
10 more years.
Yeah.
But I just want to thank you for that. We also want to encourage you guys, this weekend, we actually get a chance to honor Steve and Jean, because we recognize how much of a transition we're in right now. And I love that he said, you know, he's going to be experiencing transition in that he hasn't had a senior pastor to be under in a long time.
Yeah.
And so, we're really looking forward to celebrating. We're going to have a reception after our 11 a.m. service. There's going to be tri-tip sandwiches and like a whole little meal thing.
I think it's brisket now.
Oh, brisket.
Brisket
Okay.
and hot dogs.
Okay.
And I think hot dogs for $2.
Yeah, I think it's, chips and a drink. I think with the other one, it's about $5, and then we're gonna have some dessert trucks. I think out there too, and so we just want to encourage you guys to be a part of that. Also, if you guys picked up any of those Project 316 cards, we encourage you guys to bring them back so that we can kind of package those up together and hand them out to our senior living and assisted living communities that we've been in communication
Right,
with over the
right.
last couple weeks, and we want to love on them. This month is a month of gratitude and thankfulness, and so our challenges to you is to ask the Lord, thank him first of all for everything that you have in your life right now, and then ask him who you need to bless with a thankful heart and a grateful heart. We are grateful that we get to do community with all of you. We hope that this has just been helpful for you, and maybe if you're sitting in some of these situations, you find yourself in maybe more of a 30-day wait.
Yeah.
Man, reach out to us. We would love to be able to pray for you. We would love to be
Absolutely.
an encouragement to you. I know Kari Stacey, that's a gifting of hers. So we encourage you guys to do that. We love you, and we guys just hope that you make it just a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Sunday. Have a good one, guys. Thanks.